Welcome to episode 2 of the More Than Dough podcast, brought to you by, this time, medical medium celery juice. There's nothing about medical medium about it other than we juice some celery, thought we'd go healthy, talk about that in another podcast, but that's one of Katie's passions is being healthy. So we do these 9-day detoxes every once in a while. But if you want to learn more, it'll have to be for another podcast. If you want it, mention it in the comments. If not, we'll keep going back to the drama unfolding of...
Dun, 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 part 2 of our breakup story.
She broke up with me. No.
3 times. All right, so where did we leave off? We
talked about dating. We talked about boundaries. We talked about how do you know the difference between setting a boundary and you should stay with somebody or something being a red flag and you should bail.
Yeah.
And deciphering that, not just in dating, but also in business, in relationships, in friendships. And do you remember, what did you say it was that made that difference?
I forget.
I loved it. You said it's if they change. So the answer is, how do you know between a red flag or if you should stay longer and stick it out is if they change, right?
Yeah.
So we're talking about hitting certain mile markers.
Okay, so for me, I had a hard line. Like, didn't expect perfection, but I had a hard line on if you, the person I dated, was not honest in all things or upfront about all things or had to hide things or anything like that, that was an immediate red flag for me to be like, no, that like, because if this is how we are dating and this is how the person is dating, then this is how they will be through marriage when marriage gets a lot more tough with kids, with work, with expenses, all of it. So in my mind, it was. So
you had a few non-negotiables.
Correct. And when you hit those non-negotiables, it was done. And that's what it was. That was the soup story. That was the first time breaking up.
Go to episode 1, look up soup story.
And then the other 2 were similar to that. Is I felt like in our dating, there was a lot of like, just trying to like figure out and find the right way with each other. And from that, there was a lot of like push and pull from you, push and pull from me. But we had this real strong natural desire to be together. And obviously that was love. So
how do you not know that? Like, isn't that a classic story of girl being with the wrong guy?
Romeo and Juliet.
But like being with the wrong person, and right now we're using our scenario, which is guy, but it could be girl, it could be friend, it could be business partner. Like this happens a ton in business.
It really
so
does.
really, just because the whole goal of this podcast, I think, is to be able to take stories and lessons that we learned in our relationship, which was not perfect at all, and that's why we love sharing it, and seeing how did these principles adapt to your own personal situation, your own personal life, because they do. A principle means no matter where it's placed, it's true no matter what. So one of those things that you talked about is, okay, it's a red flag, and you've got your red flags, and you've got your non-negotiables. Mm-hmm. Your non-negotiables determine what your actions are, whether you stick around or you don't. So if a non-negotiable gets hit, you say, cut the relationship or make it known, right?
Yes. And I'd say like non-negotiables in a relationship, I would say maybe it's just like, it's like a handful. So it's not a high number amount of non-negotiables. It's
not height. It's not, preferences.
Yeah.
These have to do with character,
These have
right?
to do with character. These have to do with like, no, this is not what I want to be part of my life in the future. Such as it was a non-negotiable for you to be talking to other girls or flirting with other girls if we are officially dating. And that's what the problem was, or the issues were, is that I was like, no, that's not okay. Now, for me, I said, hey, in order to know who I'm going to marry and know who this person's going to be in marriage, you have to show that in dating.
And to me, in dating, it was, yes, we're getting to know each other, but there's certain things reserved for my wife, which is like, hey, I don't have to be fully committed until it's marriage, right? So it's still open. It's still, as long as you don't physically cheat on somebody, I thought.
Yes.
that was okay because I'm still in the grazing looking phase because I didn't know how, and I viewed it this way, this mysterious thing was going to come into my life and happen. I didn't realize like a big part of it is that you create that, meaning you choose how to create it, and based on your commitment, you receive then the person, or you work it out together.
Well, and part of this is knowing and being fully upfront about everything. I mean, that obviously that you can, it should be everything and anything, being fully upfront about anything and everything. And there is nothing to hide.
And then you work those things out. And that's what I
Yes.
think. What I loved about our dating, which was probably unique, I mean, a lot of people around us were getting married pretty quickly. And so even us being in college and still dating for a few semesters, people are like, you know, what's going on? They probably looked at us. No, they for sure, any of our roommates that are watching this are like, I don't know how those people made it. But that's what dating is work your crap out.
Yeah.
Like work it out. It's the time given aside before, honestly, even though I viewed it as the commitment happens at marriage, actually, dating is a workout stage. In business, that initial part before you get into the business is your workout stage. So acquiring the deal, getting the deal done, that's where you're seeing where everybody's true nature is. Because once there's commitment, once they're a partner, once they're married, once there's a relationship, you're actually going to start digressing a lot of times and having less natural incentive and more of the natural person. And so you want to hope that once you move that screensaver, that what's behind the screen really is that person. And I think for us in dating, it was beautiful that dating was a time for us to work our stuff out. So that way then when we got into a committed relationship, it wasn't like something was really different. It's just a continuation of fine tuning.
And as it should be, because, I mean, let's be real. Everyone has their own issues, their own baggage. So a lot of it is when you choose to get married, a lot of it is a choice of whose baggage do you want to deal with.
Yeah.
And that was my thing when we were dating, is that there was a certain part of your baggage that wasn't being shown in the forefront. And I was like, well, if we're not on the same page to show each other our baggages, which means you're not open to work out your baggage. So it wasn't so much what the baggage was. It was more so the ability or lack of ability to be open enough to be open to work it out and the why behind it. And that's why it was a non-negotiable. But
everyone's got crap. Whose do you want to deal with?
Whose do you want to deal with and work out? Because everyone has it. So then when you get into marriage, it's not like, oh my gosh, they changed so much. This is not how they were with dating. And granted, you do change those still when you get married, you have kids, you have all these stresses, you grow, you progress. Like we naturally have changed a lot from when we were first married.
A lot.
And good and bad. More good. So it's just, that's what it was, is that the non-negotiable was once I found it, what it was put on the forefront. And
so from a guy's perspective,
to change.
From a guy's perspective, it's a lot of fear-based, right? He finds this girl attractive. He thinks she's fabulous, everything she wants. He's like, well, wait a minute. I got to keep my screensaver up. So when I talk about a screensaver, you remember before you move the mouse, you've got the picture of like Hawaii or the mountains or something so beautiful. And then when you move the mouse, you got all the cluttered desktop, or you got the real desktop. That clutter and that desktop is really who you are. Sometimes it's the same, sometimes it's not, you know? And it's not until you move that screensaver that you figure out.
You're both.
So my question is this: how does a guy then not choose to be selfish and say, hey, I've got to keep the screensaver up? She thinks I'm funny. She thinks I'm adventurous. She thinks all these things. That's why she's hanging out with me and she's committed. But I've got X, Y, and Z issues on my desktop. How do you get a guy to be vulnerable so he doesn't think that what's on his desktop is going to lose the girl that he wants to marry or be with? Because we had a lot of friends that we saw that happen to, right? They end up dating and then they find out certain things about the guy, and all of a sudden they're bailed, right?
Yeah.
So then the guy's like, well, I should have hidden my crap more. And this could go guy or girl. This is just our situation right now. So how do you
Well, I think
create that environment.
you have to also be on the same page as saying, hey, am I running a sprint? Are we going to do this relationship on a sprint basis or on a marathon basis? And whether it's a guy being like, well, I don't want to show all my cards, it might scare them away. Well, eventually those cards are going to come about. The truth always comes about,
But
no
he's
matter
like,
what
I'd
it
rather have
is.
her be committed in marriage. Now she's stuck.
Nowadays,
I'm saying
that doesn't matter. People, so meaning you either.
Girls do that too, I think. Actually,
Uh-huh.
again, this isn't a guy-girl thing. This is from my perspective and my
It's a
experiences with
person.
my guys, so that's why I'm saying that. But actually, like, a lot of people do this. A lot of people
Mm-hmm.
hide their baggage in business, in friendships.
Or
So-
people don't even know that it is baggage.
It's true.
At
So
the time,
what's the incentive for the person who feels like their desktop isn't good enough? What can they do to have a safe zone? Because at the end of the day, us being able to be open about our stuff has actually, in my opinion, been what's been fabulous about our marriage. Now, we don't have a perfect marriage.
Yeah.
Nobody does. Just because we're talking about it is actually part of our own therapeutic way of just chatting about it and inviting you in so that if some of the things that we're going through could help you, that's really our goal here. So how do you lay that foundation where you say, hey, let's be open and honest in all things? Because getting it out in the beginning has made our marriage so much easier.
So that's perfect. It's better to have that in dating and to say, hey, this is who I am, and I need to know and be on the same page about everything and know if we can essentially handle each other. And then if you can't handle this or this baggage, then it's not going to work out long term anyways. So
Yeah.
would you rather go through that now or go through marriage and kids and all much greater heartbreak and loss in the future by not laying it all out on the table
Which
in the
then
beginning?
affects even more because now you got more people involved.
And there's going to be natural consequences that come from it regardless. Like after we went through what we went through, it took time to build that trust and to build that relationship and trust in each other.
Yeah, I remember that. Our first year.
Trust in you of being like, trust in you of, do I really trust this person? Which I did. And I actually got a lot of spiritual confirmations that you were, the correct person to be with and marry and all of that. So the reason, and that's the way that how I came my biggest fears of what maybe you were bringing out of not trusting you. But through the spiritual confirmations that I received, I was like, okay, I was able to get past your baggage and have this faith that it's going to all work out. But it took time to get there, and it took time on you. You changed a lot. And then I'm like, okay, this is who he is. This is, which I believe was truly you at the core the whole time. It was more so the fear that pulled out those certain actions that you did and wanting to keep yourself.
I was scared of marriage. I was scared of marrying the wrong person. I was scared of this person that I might be in love with will change because I've had friends who had experiences like that. So I led by fear.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things to realize in your own personal life is, what am I leading with? If I lead with fear, then that leads with a lot of negativity. A lot of your actions will be because of being scared. And it's a wrong place to be. And a slight change, which is faith, you lead with optimism, you lead with love, you lead with hope. Now, faith leaves you exposed to get hurt, to get heartbroken, to have to break up a relationship or a business transaction. However, by leading by faith, you end up being able to get the best outcome, but you got to go through potential risk and heartache. Leading with fear, you're trying to protect the heartache. You're trying to control and utilize, control, right? And what happens is, by trying to control the scenario so much, you actually end up breaking it or not allowing the right things to happen, and you smother it. And so this is very negative and very controlling. Faith is very open, very lax. And I believe that's what we did in our dating. Was I operated out of fear. You were great at operating out of faith. And one of those things, they can't exist in the same, sometimes in similar spaces, but it's like light and darkness. Either one's there or the other one's there. And I had to come to the light and realize, there's fear,
Coming to the light.
but having faith and trust, and that's what it was. Even when I proposed, I was so scared. So scared. And it had nothing to do with you. Like the massivest blessing that I've ever gotten in my whole life. And yet I didn't know. And what I'm grateful for is in my personal experience, I never got what I thought was an answer, like how I'd gotten rid of other things, until I actually decided. People are going to make fun of me and rip me, and it's fine. It was like, what do you mean? And it had nothing to do with Katie. It had everything to do with the commitment of marriage. And when I committed, I said, hey, you know what? I felt great about this. Things have lined up. She makes me a better person. She makes me happy. I'm madly in love with her. I was so, and still am so attracted to you. I just probably just say, I tried cutting it down. I'm like, she's freaking hot. And we had a lot of fun, but it was still like, what if? So anyway, when I chose to make the commitment, then in the temple, Oakland Temple, that's when it was like, I received what I thought I needed as a confirmation. When it was like, yes.
Yeah.
And
so it was after the risk
trial
was
of
taken.
your faith.
Yes.
Trial of my faith.
And you had to just come to the light.
Yep. Yep. And so, moral of the story is whether you're in a business transaction, business has the same thing. Business has a LOI stage, which is letter of intent. That letter of intent is almost like actually starting the dating process. And then you have your due diligence phase, right? So you have that middle time, and there's a time given to do your due diligence, the finding out, the sifting, the figuring out who the employees are, what's in the books, what's behind it all. That stage is like dating. And so being able to be open and honest during that stage allows you to figure out what are you really going to be like?
Yeah.
And it's less important, like you said, to operate out of fear that you're going to lose something or not get it, because sometimes you might not want it. And focusing on a marathon and saying, hey, look, I'm going to show up as my true, genuine self and my true, genuine due diligence research. Say, is this for us really or not? Will allow your marathon to be so much better because you'll end up with the right things if those are the right people.
Well, you'll make it through.
Well,
we made it.
We made it through.
Or we're making it.
We're making it through. This is episode 2 of the More Than Dough podcast. Here we go. Like and subscribe. Get down in there and tell us what you want to hear about next, what topics or principles you want to talk about, because, hey, we're here for it. And catch you at the next one.